Ladies and gentlemen, this is a pattern of abuse which we are not blaming the Prime Minister for. She didn't invent abuse. But we noticed that since the time of independence, we have had to suffer patterns of abuse by our political elites. I know what it is like to sit on a car from Chaguanas to Port of Spain every single morning with your children, your parents, the elderly, day after day after day from Arima to Port of Spain, from Port of Spain to Arima, and suffer the ignominy and the humiliation, the desperation of being trafficked. I know what it is like to go into a licensing office and have to bribe your way out of it. I know what it is like to go into a slum and to see people who have to buy a book for their children and a bread and cheese with their last bullet in their guns. I know what it is like to pay for your nose through mortgages because land prices have been inflated. I know what it is to have systematic abuse on the people by the political elites, a system of entrenched political abuse by a political elites, and we take it, we accept it, we go on with it, and I know your desperation about it. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have been asked why another hunger strike at this time. I want to take your mind back to a political platform in Penal just before the general elections in 2010. The Prime Minister is standing and she's speaking with resounding clarity. And she says, no highway, no byway. And she's referring, of course, to the David to Mondesir highway. We don't totally agree with that proposition because highways are important. And we believe that highways can also be very destructive, especially in dense areas, in areas where you have huge economic, social, and ecological assets, in which case you resort to the optimum system of connectivity, which are byways, connector roads, link roads, auxiliary roads, feeder roads. That was a statement that was backed up by many other opposition politicians since 2005. Minister Munilal, for example, led a movement against the highway by taking the residents up the way to Trinto Plan to protest. He organized the people. He brought Prakash Ramadar to serve as a lawyer. He brought in Tim Gopi-Singh. So there was an orchestrated plan by the then opposition to stop the highway. Lo and behold, in January 2011, when the residents were waiting for the government to announce the stoppage of the David to Mondesir highway, the government announced that they had signed a contract with the OAS to build the David to Mondesir highway. There was no tendering for it. A $7.5 multi-billion-dollar project, and there is no tendering for it. They had gone against the explicit advice of the IADB. Their senior ministers, the ministers of finance and planning, were invited to a meeting in 2010, just after they won the elections. And they had done their feasibility study. And they refused to grant a loan for that project. Their primary concern was that it was not feasible. It was too expensive. They advocated the system of use of connector roads, link roads, by roads, repair of the existing road system, and there was too much infrastructure involved. They refused to sign it. I also want to take your mind back to March 2012, when the Prime Minister afforded the Highway Route Movement a meeting at the Parliament Centre at the Waterfront Complex. It was a cordial meeting, and there were many ministers present. We said, Madam Prime Minister, if you want to take 1.4 million tons of aggregate from the northern range and dump it across the Rapuch Lagoon, and compromise the integrity of the lagoon, fragment it, and if you want to fragment 13 communities and destroy 300 homes, multi-million-dollar businesses, a whole network of cultural systems and mosques and temples and churches and schools, thousands of acres of agricultural land, systems of land inheritance and land tenure stretching back for generations. You have to be careful. You have to make sure that the feasibility and the cost-benefit analysis and so on are done properly. And the Prime Minister kindly agreed and said explicitly, I will put on hold and I will do a review of the Davie to Mount Desire Highway. She hasn't doubted that. She said it in public. What came after that was very surprising and interesting. 3 months after that, in June, at the end of June, the government employed soldiers and policemen to smash a camp, an illegal camp for which we had gotten permission from the head of NAMDEFCO to construct. Practicing our advocacy, we had our gardens and we had our prayer rooms, and they basically smashed a camp. Then followed a first hunger strike. Why was that hunger strike necessary? Because they started work at the Faizabad interchange. And in fact, work on the Faizabad interchange started there, and the hunger strike started a week after, exactly on that spot. It then moved to Port of Spain. Arising out of that hunger strike, you had the Armstrong report. A group of concerned citizens got together and lobbied with the Prime Minister, and they agreed to do a report. Professor Armstrong handled that report. He headed the committee. The government fully participated in it. They sent reams and volumes of documentation and data. They paid close to $1 million for it. They sent witnesses. They signed an agreement to consider the report. A scientific report written by 19 scientists, and they advocate. You do a social impact analysis, you do a cost-benefit analysis, you do a hydrological report, the CC for this project is flawed, halt and do a review. It was reiterating the very same promise that the Prime Minister made. She ignored it and she trashed it. What is the way forward? I don't think that the way forward is very difficult. Our position is very clear. We want the San Fernando to Point Fortin Highway. We want the Davie to Golconda Highway. And it is possible when you get to Davie that you create a highway between Davie across empty Caroni lands where there are no districts, where there are no lagoons, where there are no businesses, joining the San Fernando to Point Fortin Highway. But very importantly, and I don't think many people know this, there is no traffic at all between Davie and Mount Desire. Absolutely no traffic. The highway is proposed there to solve traffic in other people's places. And therefore, a more sensitive approach needs to be taken. And that is why we advocate as a concept, as an optimum system of road connectivity and transportation, not the highway, but byways, connector roads, which can go around rich communities, which could go around ecological assets, which are more sinuous, which are more developmentally applicable and suitable and feasible. Now, the Prime Minister has said that her hands are tied because the matter is before the court. She has also said we are trying to block the court process. Madam Prime Minister, you are silk, and we respect that. But you know that 2 weeks ago you were bargaining with the illustrious footballers of Trinidad and Tobago outside of court to resolve a matter and pay them money from state finances. Do you need a court to tell you that you have broken your promise and to read the Armstrong report and its recommendations? We're not going to block any court proceedings. The court proceedings will continue. I recommend for the viewer a look at the High Court's decision on this matter and the decision of the minority judge in this particular matter. I also recommend for them the Armstrong report. We will take these 3 documents when we get permission from the appeal court to go to the Privy Council, and we will use that, and I have every hope that the Privy Council will rule in our favor. I feel that the chances in the Privy Council are excellent. But this is not a matter for the court. This is a matter for the people and the government to decide and to sit down and talk about. It's the same thing happening every day with the Guave Road farmers. The same thing happening at Tacarigua. It's the same thing happening with Invaders Bay. Lack of process leading to abuse and corruption. And so the hunger strike will continue because the political elites have a way of smoothing out the contradictions which face you. They have a way of telling you that everything is okay while doing very little, and not letting you recognize that you're being systematically abused. And I've just described what it is. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a field of battle of the spirits. And I know that you're also involved in your fields of battle. Whatever it is, ladies and gentlemen, I ask of you, it's not just the government. You have the will, you have the power, you have the willpower to fight through and through the arrows, through the cord. And that is the spirit which I engage you to develop and fight abuse and systematic corruption which has beleaguered our country. generations after generations. And that is the spirit which I go forward with. I want to say I'm with you in your struggle. And I wish to thank all our supporters who with me in the struggle. We must go on. We must put our foot forward. We must struggle. We must win this. Victory will be ours. Because when we put our first foot forward and we say yes, our God goes with us. And we have no doubt of that. Good night, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you.